Okay, good. Let me take a spot. Thank you all for being here today. As usual, this is our Monday press conference in which we try to do two main things. The first is to provide a brief update on gun violence over the prior week, and the second is to talk about more proactive and affirmative efforts that are going on within the DA's office, and to hear from people with a special area of expertise about that. I'd like to start by acknowledging community stakeholders, staff, and media who are here. We have with us today ADA Sarah Lichter, who is the supervisor of the Gun Violence Task Force, which of course is a joint effort between the state, meaning the AG's office, and the district attorney's office that has existed for about 15 years and is unique in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We have ADA Chesley Lightsey, the chief of the Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit, a unit that was combined under this administration from its prior naming as just a homicide unit. We have ADA Deborah Watson-Stokes, who is the supervisor of the District Attorney's Office's Municipal Court Unit. We have Keziah Cameron, who is the supervisor of the DAO's Victim Witness Services Unit. State Senator Vincent Hughes of the 7th Senatorial District is with us. Councilmember Curtis Jones of the 4th City Council District is also with us. Thank you for being here. We have Ryan Smith, who is a teacher at Mathematics, Civics, and Sciences School. We have Kayla Waddington, a 9th grader for Mathematics, Civics, and Sciences. Asia Moore, an 11th grader from the same school. And we have the Reverend Donald Moore, senior pastor of Mount Carmel Baptist Church, which is where we are now. And thank you, Reverend, for hosting us here today. So we will start with the gun crime update. And this is for the week of April the 4th to April the 10th. Year-to-date, homicides are at 139. This date last year, they were at 102. That is about a 36% increase. More specifically, if you count the number of days, last year at this time, when we were at the very, very beginning of the pandemic shutting down the courts, you essentially had one homicide per day. During the period of the pandemic, what we have seen is a consistent pattern of between about 1.25 and 1.5 homicides a day, which of course is a terrible uptick. This weekend, the city of Philadelphia experienced another violent weekend as relates to gun violence. There have been and there will continue to be very serious consequences for people who are involved in shootings and gun homicides. For those of you who missed the news, here's the memo. The conviction rate for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office for shootings, fatal and not non-fatal, right before the courts were essentially closed, was nearly 85%. That is an extremely high conviction rate. We are not having a problem convicting people and giving them appropriately lengthy sentences for this kind of conduct. We will not have a problem if you engage in it and you are caught. And we're doing everything we can to assist the Philadelphia police with what is much more difficult, and that is actually solving those crimes and having those cases turned over to the DA's office. My office is committed to reviewing cases on an individual basis to ensure that we are prosecuting the right people. We do not want to repeat the mistakes of the past where somebody got convicted, but it didn't happen to be the one who was guilty, and so the guilty one went free. Getting it right on the front end is necessary and is a crucial priority. We do not want any more victims, co-victims, or communities suffering the devastation and trauma that gun violence charges. We are doing everything we can to work collaboratively with government at all levels, law enforcement, faith leaders, and community-based agencies to put an end to the senseless violence that we see in the city of Philadelphia involving guns. While we are committed to reforming the justice system, we have said from the very first day, and I mean before I was in office, we have said from the very first day that reform goes hand in hand with focusing on the most serious crimes, and the most serious crimes include shootings, and they include gun homicides. If you are involved in using a gun to commit any crime, our office will prosecute you, and we will prosecute you very vigorously. Victims, families, and communities impacted by gun violence can contact our CARES unit for support at 215-686-8019. All right. Now we would like to, let me just give you a couple of other factoids that are probably useful. In the last week, 7 homicides over 7 days from April the 4th through April the 10th, and there were 20 non-fatal shootings. There were 92 cases opened involving guns or gun violence. The median bail set, now let me understand, let me make sure you understand though. When I say there's 92 cases opened, there were 98 arrests. So out of 98 arrests for 277 incidents, there were 92 cases brought by the DA's office. As you know, we have had an ongoing issue involving the failure of cash bail. The median bail set for illegal possession of guns was $75,000. In the majority of those cases, we are asking for $1 million. The median bail set for violent offenses involving a gun was $100,000. Something has to be done about this. We do these press conferences week after week after week, and week after week, I report that the average amount of bail that is being imposed by bail commissioners under our current failed cash bail system is on the order of 1/10 of what we have consistently requested for over a year. And I'm grateful that the City Council and other groups want to know more about this problem that we are having within our justice system. All right, we want to talk a little bit about some of the positive developments in terms of streamlining the process for handling gun-related and other serious cases through partnerships that we have with our stakeholders. So in the last month or so, we have seen the commencement of a unified system to do preliminary hearings in cases involving crimes committed with guns. Shootings are still being done in the same courtrooms with homicide preliminary hearings and with the same judges. That is an advance that we all achieved together several months ago that has been very, very positive. This is different. This is other crimes committed with guns. So, for example, robbery with a gun, pistol whipping someone with a gun, pointing a gun but not firing it. Those would just be some of the examples of what we are seeing. And then, of course, gun possession offenses as well. We are grateful to the First Judicial District, the Defender Association, and to the Private Defense Bar for their ongoing collaboration, communication with us in order to streamline how these gun-related cases are handled and to make sure that we have optimal representation on all sides. At this time, I would like to introduce ADA Sarah Lichter, who is with our Gun Violence Task Force. She'll provide an overview of the work of the task force. She will discuss prosecutorial work taking place in gun court and provide some more specific stories, data, and outcomes from this past month. ADA Lichter, as soon as we have cleaned up the spot, it will be your turn.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Sarah Lichter, and I'm an assistant supervisor at the Gun Violence Task Force with the District Attorney's Office. I want to especially thank the Philadelphia Police Department, as well as the District Attorney and all our other law enforcement stakeholders for coming together today to speak about gun crime in our city. Combating gun violence starts with getting guns out of the hands of those who are most dangerous. And that's what gun court is about. Since we've started gun court, approximately 90% of illegal gun cases have been moved efficiently and effectively to a stage where those responsible for these crimes will either resolve them through a trial or with a guilty plea, ultimately acknowledging the crime they've committed. Through this partnership with the First Judicial District, created to create a specialized court that hears the most serious gun cases, we as law enforcement have been able to dramatically improve the percentage of illegal gun cases moving through the court system toward a conviction, which helps improve the safety of Philadelphia by holding those criminals accountable for the conduct they've committed. These cases include the successful prosecution of standard gun possession cases, often in cars, to serious offenses involving guns being fired, often at victims of domestic violence, to also using Instagram to prosecute people who possess illegal firearms. This success is in part due to the hard work of the senior and most experienced prosecutors from the District Attorney's Office, who are specially assigned to handle the cases in gun court. The Gun Violence Task Force, which is a unique partnership with the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General and the District Attorney's Office, oversees these prosecutors and the cases that are heard in gun court. The Gun Violence Task Force pairs veteran law enforcement agents with specialized prosecutors to build, investigate, and prosecute the most serious crimes involving guns in Philadelphia. This partnership allows for the investigation into the origins of gun crimes and for deeper, long-term investigations into those individuals and their associates who are driving the vast majority of violent gun crime in too many of Philadelphia's neighborhoods. We at Gun Violence Task Force are excited for the continued impact gun court is having, and we desire to make Philadelphia a safer place. Thank you.
Thank you, ADA Lichter. So I want to make sure that when we talk about having a rate of holding these cases over for trial, that everybody understands what that means. For felony matters, most cases in Philadelphia will go through a preliminary hearing where a judge has to say, yes, you have enough evidence to have a trial. To have a 90% or 90% plus rate of those cases being held over for trial is a very high rate. It is a great achievement, and I have to say I believe, based on the stories I have heard, not only from ADA Lichter, but also from ADA Watson-Stokes and others, I believe it does have to something to do with our other collaborations. For example, I am hearing that we are getting DNA taken at the very beginning of the case, and we're getting DNA results back quickly. Why is that important? Well, let me just give you an example. When you have a situation where there has been a shooting, police arrive on a scene, and they see a young man there, stop the young man who does not have a gun on his person. And then they find a gun with blood on it, and by immediately testing that gun, they are able to establish that the gun has the blood of that young man. You have a very different kind of case. You have a direct connection between that gun and that young man that you never had before. You're going from having a case that is much weaker to having a case that is much stronger. That level of improvement in evidence, in my opinion, comes out of the excellent work by the PPD and the DA's office in having weekly meetings where they go over every, within certain categories, every new gun violence case to see where the gaps are. Very early in that process, it was determined that DNA was being taken from guns, but it was not being taken from suspects right away. And this is a crucial difference. When we see the impact that is had by doing things the right way from the very beginning, when we see that kind of high-level collaboration where the PPD is trying to fix that in every single case, we are very grateful for that, and we think that they should share in this success. All right, we will now hear from ADA Deborah Watson-Stokes, and after that from Keziah Cameron. ADA Watson-Stokes is going to be talking about the DAO's participation in court proceedings for felony-level custody cases where the hearings are taking place at the jails. Now, this is the pandemic. This is unusual. We do not usually do preliminary hearings at the jails, and I say that as somebody who did preliminary hearings for 30 years before I became chief prosecutor. But it is one of the ways that, once again, the courts are trying to bring some sense to a shutdown caused by the pandemic. ADA Deb Watson-Stokes is going to talk about that. It is a significant improvement, obviously a work in progress, but a significant improvement at a time when very few hearings can happen in the Criminal Justice Center and very few inmates can be brought in by bus to the Criminal Justice Center as a consequence of the pandemic. We will then hear, and I won't jump up in between, but we will then hear from Keziah Cameron, who is the supervisor of the DAO's Victim Witness Services Unit, who will be discussing the outreach that is made to victims and witnesses to offer support and assistance throughout criminal proceedings. ADA Watson-Stokes, after a brief cleaning, it will be your turn.
Good morning. I am Deb Watson-Stokes. I am a 30-year prosecutor. I am supervisor of the Municipal Court Unit. The Municipal Court Unit is one of the largest units in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, and we also have the newest members of the DA's office from all over the country, but most importantly, Philadelphia. We are the innovators of virtual preliminary hearings, and as a result of innovating the virtual preliminary hearings, we are proud to announce that we also have a program with the prisons, the detention center, where we can now do preliminary hearings at the detention center. Okay, why is that a big deal? There are a number of individuals who have not been able to have their hearings in a timely fashion because of COVID. Those individuals, because of caps, prison caps, and how many people we can have in the CJC, those individuals who are incarcerated, they have to wait. So all of the stakeholders said, let's have more access to justice. Let's have a system where not only a person who is accused of a crime can get to his or her actual hearing faster, but let's also have a system where the people who are victims of crimes can testify safely. So we developed, in conjunction with all our other stakeholders, judges, defenders, private defense attorneys, Larry Krasner, Victim Witness Services, sheriffs, and the police, we developed hearings at the detention center. All right, what that means for our victims is that they don't have to go to the detention center. They come, they testify safely in our office. They're giving PPD. They testify via Zoom. That means that we have less contact with all the individuals that you may come in contact with in the CJC. We've had great success with seniors and people who ordinarily who would have a little bit more trouble going to the CJC. So this is a great and new innovative process. Right now, it's a new program, but we've had 36 successful preliminary hearings, and those are the most serious cases. Those are burglaries, those are robberies, and those are gun cases. So we're looking forward to having more virtual work, more virtual preliminary hearings, in our office. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm always a little nervous at these things, so my name is Kayla Cameron, and I'm the director of the Victim Services Unit in the DAO office. I am super grateful for this opportunity to talk about the hard work that our team is doing. They have made real effort to make sure not only are the victims and witnesses in this new system heard, but their questions are answered before they even have a chance to ask. We've set up a hub in the DAO, so they are directly in our space where there is enough space and it's comfortable. We make sure that there are safety protocols in place. If you forgot your mask, or if you don't have PPE, or if you're uncomfortable, we have those things there for you. We also are working with our community partners to provide either victim services resources, and we are really excited to be able to do this person-to-person victim services again. It is really about, that's what the job is about for us, to be able to walk the complainant, the survivors, their families through this process, making sure they understand what's going on, and making sure, regardless of the outcome, they know that they were heard. And so I'm grateful to talk about how hard my team is working to do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you to ADA Deb Watson-Stokes, who does in fact shepherd our new hires, takes that tremendous talent they have and teaches them to be the truly excellent lawyers they're becoming. And thank you so much also to our Chief of Victim Witness Services, Kayla Cameron, who, nervous or not, always gets it done. Now, we talked a lot about enforcement. I just want to place it in context quickly, and then I want to talk about prevention for a moment before we turn it over to some really heavy speakers, and I'll explain to you who they are in just one moment. So if we look back a couple of years, what we see is that the DA's office unified homicide unit with a shooting unit in order to provide better mentoring for young attorneys and also to give some of the homicide attorneys a little relief. But not every single case, not every single one after another, involved looking in a file and seeing people who have been killed. We have seen tremendous success with that. About a year ago, we went to the idea of assigning assistant prosecutors to each of the 6 detective divisions around the city, and we're very grateful that the police commissioner agreed to that and allowed us to copy a model that worked in Chicago, where they also struggle at times with gun violence. That's a little bit over a year. A few months ago, we went to a system, once again, thank you to the PPD and to the commissioner, of having some of their best and most experienced people and some of our best and most experienced people meet every week so that they could look at the gun violence cases that were generated that week. And they could not only spot individual micro issues in each case, but they could spot training issues, systemic issues, ways we could work together. One example of what came out of that is what I mentioned earlier, which is that we saw DNA being taken from guns, but not being taken from the suspects immediately. And with their help, with their assistance, with their partnership, we were able to fix that. Well, I'm happy to report that we have now moved to another phase, which is just last week, a few days ago, the police commissioner agreed to something we've been working on for a few months, which is to have personnel attorneys from the DA's office actually in the intelligence center for the police department. There has been a process going back to prior administrations where certain people in the intelligence unit of the police department were reluctant to share intelligence information. That has been worked out. That shirt has been ironed. I'm thrilled to say that. And it means not only that we're able to share info with them and they're able to share it with us, but that based upon the new intelligence unit within the DA's office that we founded with Chance Lee, we have gotten to the point where we're actually going to have personnel in that intelligence unit. What does that mean? That means that instead of once a week looking at all these 60 cases or 80 cases, it means that when the arrest happens, at the moment of the arrest, we are right there. When the cuffs are on, before the bail is set, we are right there to assist with getting the information we need to do a good bail argument, have a good bail package. We're right there to say, this is good investigation, but let's check the social media before this person gets out and erases it. Let's check the social media right now. Can we somehow make this all work together? We're very excited about that real-time partnership, which will just supplement all the other efforts. Now, turning to prevention, and this office is dedicated to what works. And if you're dedicated to what works, you better be dedicated to prevention, because there's absolutely no question. When we look at national models in Los Angeles and Chicago, elsewhere, prevention works and is often far more effective than enforcement efforts, which of course only begin after the blood is on the ground. We don't want the blood on the ground. That is the point. And therefore, we have called for a $100 million fund. This is part of what the black clergy has endorsed in Philadelphia. It's what is coming from community groups, and we have endorsed it. A $100 million fund made from public and private resources that will be used to invest in the kind of community-based organizations that are real solutions, and not just invest now, but invest moving forward. One example, without getting into a lot of detail, is the non-law enforcement-led program Cure Violence, which really looks very much like something that was done in Philly quite some time ago by a guy named Benny Swans. I didn't mess that up, did I? Okay. We need to do that if we want to have fewer people getting hurt in the city of Philadelphia. Okay, but in terms of prevention, we also are participating in the Gun Violence Intervention Custom Notification Program, where you go to people who appear to be in danger of shooting or being shot, and you offer them, I think what our council member would refer to as one. You know what? I'll let you do it, council member. Council member will do it better than me.
Council member iron that shirt.
All right, he can iron that shirt.
He's gonna iron that shirt.
But you give them alternatives, and one of those alternatives is services and a pathway away from crime, and the other one, unfortunately, leads right to a jail cell. And that is what has to be when we're talking about blood in the streets and people shooting guns. Our community engagement unit continues to host monthly one-stop job and resource hubs that have been tremendously successful. They have connected over 3,000 residents to employment and other services, and people who have jobs, with very few exceptions, do not commit crimes. The last one we actually did in person was right here. It was in March of 2020, right before everybody knew the word pandemic. We did it here, but we have continued during the pandemic doing these events monthly and virtually. When is the next one going to be, Lamar? First Thursday of May will be the next one. Every third week of the month, the DA's office hosts in-person and virtual 90-minute listening sessions with students at 14 Philadelphia public schools across the city. During these sessions, we engage with young people ages 12 to 18 regarding a variety of issues: gun violence, trauma, bullying, peer pressure, internet, among others. And in that vein, it is my pleasure now to introduce three people. The first is Mr. Ryan Smith, who is a teacher at Mathematics, Civics, and Sciences, and then two students, Asia Moore and Kayla Waddington. They will discuss how gun violence has impacted their family, their school, their community. And I can tell you, I mean, politicians are nice, even when they got the right-hand, left-hand thing right. They're nice. But these are some heavy speakers. I hope you will give them your full attention. I'm going to get out of the way so that Mr. Smith can introduce these students as he sees fit. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Smith, and I just want to thank District Attorney Krasner for having us here this morning. Also, on behalf of Veronica Joyner, the founder of the Mathematics and Science Charter School, I want to thank the District Attorney's Office for everything they've done for my school. District Attorney Krasner spoke about dedication to prevention, and that's what they've done the past 2 years. Over the past 2 years, my school has lost 5 of our students to gun violence. And on those 5 really traumatic, grief-stricken occasions, District Attorney's Office was there each and every time the next day they were there with grief counselors, trauma specialists, to work with our students to help them with their trauma or their grief. And I can't understate the impact that the District Attorney's Office had on our students. I think my students can do a better job of speaking about that, so I want to turn the floor over to them. But I just want to say thank you to the District Attorney's Office. I want to turn the floor over first to Kayla Waddington.
Good morning. My name is Kayla Waddington, and I am a 9th grade student at the Mathematics, Civics, and Sciences Charter School of Philadelphia. Over the past few months, I have been fortunate enough to take part in the District Attorney's Office's monthly listening sessions. These sessions have made an incredible impact. For starters, it's great to know that the District Attorney's Office actually cares what we students have to say. When I was first invited to partake in this conversation, I was expecting a pessimistic lecture where city officials would talk to us about how big of an epidemic gun violence really is. This couldn't be further from reality. For the 90 minutes that they're with us, the members of the DAO sincerely listen to what we have to say. As high schoolers, many people are quick to write us off as just kids, but the DAO has never made us feel this way. Instead, they've probed us to think deeper on the topics and issues which we discuss. I know that my fellow students and I have substantial contributions to make to the topic of gun violence, and knowing that we have a platform to share our voices and opinions is empowering. These sessions also provide an optimistic view of our future. Gun violence is, without a doubt, a monumental topic to tackle. But thanks to these monthly listening sessions, we now have the opportunity to discuss solutions to gun violence. It's comforting to know that I will be inheriting a world where its leaders sought and implemented solutions to the problems with plague it. And thanks to these listening sessions, my fellow students and I are now a part of those solutions, and we take this duty very seriously.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Aja Moore, and I'm an 11th grade student at the Mathematics, Civics, and Sciences Charter School. I'd just like to preface by saying that my classmates and I are very grateful for the opportunity presented to us by the District Attorney's Office. We really appreciate the initiative of the District Attorney's Office to contact the people that are growing up in the communities that they wish to improve. Over the course of the past year, we have had many productive conversations with the District Attorney's Office during our listening sessions, most of which focused on prevention. And one of the most important prevention measures that we came up with was the allocation of funds to extracurricular and recreational programs. Oftentimes, people who grow up in impoverished communities can't see themselves beyond their current position, but by offering students an opportunity to see things beyond their neighborhood, it could give them the boost of ambition that they just aren't getting. Also, recreational programs and extracurricular activities could serve as a deterrent from students engaging in delinquency. As far as students who have already engaged in delinquency or are even facing criminal charges, we also came up with the idea to further progress programs that are already in the city of Philadelphia. Particularly, we hope that the city makes a stronger push for court-mandated therapy and counseling sessions. Therapy is a really valuable resource that should absolutely be pushed in impoverished communities because it would magnanimously reduce gun violence. As it stands, gun violence continues to be a problem because we continue to treat the symptoms and are doing nothing about the cause. So, to close, I would once again like to thank the District Attorney's Office for the wonderful opportunity that they have provided for our school, and we are thankful that our voices are being heard in places beyond ourselves. And I just hope that you take our ideas into consideration. Thank you.
Well, I was right. Okay, it is now my pleasure to introduce two elected officials who have been champions of fighting gun violence for a very long time. State Senator Vincent Hughes and also Councilmember Curtis Jones in that order. And then the cleanup hitter will be the Reverend Dr. Donald Moore, who is fighting gun violence in a different way. Senator Hughes?
So I want to thank the district attorney for allowing me to follow the students. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll consider that on May 18th. Okay, all right. Aren't they impressive? Aren't they impressive? I don't think I'm violating any rules here, but I'm looking for summer interns, and I'll just leave it at that. All right? Okay. First, let me thank the District Attorney Krasner for inviting me to participate and for doing this work to fully educate and fully inform the broader community about what the facts are and what's actually happening in his office. Pastor Moore, it is so good to be back on the hallowed grounds of Mount Carmel Baptist Church. All right? We've been operating in a virtual world for far too long, and hopefully soon we'll be out of that. But it's significant that the district attorney has brought us to this part of West Philadelphia to have this conversation and to talk to the folks across the city and the state about what is actually happening and what is it we need to be doing. I would add just, I think, 2 points to this. First of all, this is a partnership to deal with this problem. All of us are in this thing together. Unfortunately, the state has for far too long been how shall we say this, the boil on the butt of progress with respect to dealing with gun violence. It's been a hindrance, largely because of the preemption issue. Would that be correct? However, there has been one light that has shown some success, and that is with the Gun Violence Task Force, which has been reported on, I believe, a few moments ago. Our effort will be, as we deal at the state level on legislative matters, but hopefully as we deal at the state level on funding matters, that we're able to drive a significant increase in the funding for the Gun Violence Task Force to help strengthen some good work that has been done over the years that has been successful. Other communities around the state want to replicate it, but we have driven that home in this area for a few years, and we want to increase the funding in that space to provide more resources to those individuals who are participating in that, so that you have that cross information and that success in that space. The other thing relates to the two students that we just heard from. We have a responsibility to make sure that we resource their voices, that we resource their cries for help, that we resource the solutions that they come up with. We have that responsibility. And the district attorney talked about the $100 million fund. Well, I happen to know that there are significant dollars coming to both the city and the state from the American Rescue Plan that allow for some discretion and that allow for city and state to help fund that initiative. And, you know, voting does matter, right? And a decision was made, and consequently there are resources coming to the city and the state that have discretion that can help resource that initiative. We need to fund that, and they need to be a priority. We'll be working at the state level to try to get more resources to fund the solutions that these young people have come up with, and I know I can count on my councilmen to do the same at the city level. We're in this together, and we can win this together, and we're all got to do our part, individually and collectively, to help these young people realize their dreams and make for a safer community. Thank you very much. Councilman?
First of all, thank you, Mr. District Attorney, for raising the conscious level of gun violence in our city to a level where it is equal to what we're doing in regards to the pandemic, because it is a pandemic. And there's not one cause only of this pandemic. There are many causes. We tried to do through a 100-shooter analysis of the causes of why individuals wind up pulling a trigger at a crime scene. And there are many different causes of that. So therefore, the solutions have to be just as varied. One of them is listening to our young people who made me so proud, it brought my blood pressure down. Thank you. Second thing is my district attorney, who has brought his staff to not just want to prosecute their way out of this, but to provide diverse solutions on prevention and the right hand of fellowship or the left hand of punishment where necessary. And we appreciate that, because as chair of public safety, at the end of the day, we have to feel safe. And in this hallowed ground, I thank Pastor Moore, who the last time we were in this room, through a gun buyback program, we took 150 guns off the street for grocery money. And they weren't your grandpa's guns. They were AR-15s. They were Tech 9s. They were weapons that do serious harm to people in this neighborhood. And in this neighborhood, every 28 days, in a 10-square block radius, someone will be shot. Sometimes it comes in bunches. Sometimes they are fatal. But that's the kill zone we are in. And therefore, sometimes when I see my district attorney's call on my cell phone, I shudder. I really don't want to answer it, because I know all too often it's bad news about one of my constituents. We had to make a deal where he would come and call me every now and then just to check on me. But what we are doing and what you are seeing is a partnership that I believe is unprecedented. And you're going to see coming forward, as my colleague at the state level said, a city council priority plan, a part of a Marshall Plan, if you would, to identify causes and solutions to gun violence in the 4th, in the 7th, and in our city. Thank you.
Good morning. Pastor Donald Moore of Mount Carmel Baptist Church. As I sit and listen, or stand and listen to the statistics, the data, information coming from the DA's office, information coming from the students, you would probably think it's all just peril and gloom and doom. However, as I sit and drive in and around Philadelphia, actually Philadelphia is having an existence of what Charles Dickens wrote in 1859, in A Tale of Two Cities. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. An age of wisdom, an age of foolishness. Season of hope, season of despair. And the truth of the matter is, you have all of this gun violence taking place in a city that is bustling with commerce. You see multi-million-dollar projects going on in West Philly that is named University City. You see the renaming of other areas in West Philly, from West Philly to Walnut Hills. And as you look at this progress and as you hear the perpetual news of gun violence, Philadelphia has the tale of two cities. And unless you have the same intentionality to bring in development, the same intentionality to have similar projects that just 2 blocks from here, what is it, New Market West? How many millions of dollars was that? $50 million, 2 blocks from here. You have a couple of other projects that are going on, but in the midst of what is allegedly supposed to be one of the worst areas in the city, you still have so much progress, so much hope. So I would like to see, I mean, I could stand and give you more data, but what I would really like to see is that the same intentionality be given to areas of policing, and I'm not an elected official, so we're at Mount Carmel. I could pretty much say what I want to say. And I would like to see the intentionality for policing in our communities, where the police live in the city, where they do not, they're allowed to come in and work to extrapolate the resources to take care of their families outside of the city. I think there's a disconnect. And if there's a disconnect at that level, you will never have the commitment from those who should work in concert with the DA. Again, this is not a political speech. I'm not running for anything. But I think if you have a PPD and a DA's office that's working in concert and not working in conflict, I think you could see more favorable outcomes. Students should not have to meet with the DA on what should be done for their city to be safer. They're students. They're at the times of their life where there should be loving life, learning and having fun, whereas now they have to, we have to have these monthly meetings, these weekly meetings. They don't even know what it's like to be a child in some of the best times of their life. So as we continue to navigate between these tale of two cities, it's incumbent upon our elected officials, our public servants, to do things necessary to make sure their reality is one where they can have a reality of hope. God bless you. Heaven smile upon you. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
All right. I don't know what to say to that other than that was marvelous. Are there any questions for any of these very interesting folks who are here?
Krasner, I want to start with you. As we start to open up, and that of course includes the courts and social services, how quickly will this crisis improve?
Well, I don't think there's any question that as you look at the national pattern, the increase in gun violence in essentially every major city follows the trajectory of the spread of the virus. So we are seeing some very good success under this administration with administering vaccines. We hope, but don't know, that we're not going to see too terrible a resurgence with these variants and so on. I would say that the sense I get from our partners, but also from city officials, is that they want to reopen the things that are protective as soon as medical circumstances permit. They want to reopen the rec centers with a plan, with a safety plan, as soon as they can. They want to reopen the swimming pools as soon as they can. When we get to the point where all these things that got shut down, like organized sports, rec centers, swimming pools, summer camps, summer job programs, arts programs, after-school programs, open classrooms, when we get to that point, there's absolutely no question. All over the country, we are going to see significant reductions in the level of gun violence. Now, having said that, that's not enough, because this city has a chronic problem with violence. It has had it for decades. And that might be understating it. It has a chronic problem with violence. So we got to come out of this learning lessons. The first lesson is all those things I just mentioned are really protective. When they got stripped away, this is what happened. We saw gun violence go through the roof. So we have to not only bring them back, but we have to invest in them more heavily, because it's a good investment, because we see how much impact it has. And then, of course, the other aspect of it is we have to look at other things in the community, other preventative resources that are not necessarily led by law enforcement in order to make a difference. It is my hope that it will be very quick, and I'm sure everybody else up here who's losing sleep over this issue feels exactly the same way. Are there any other questions?
The police commissioner, there's a new partnership between Philly Police and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The commissioner is saying she's been asking for more serious consequences. What's your response to this new partnership and that the district attorney's office is not directly involved?
Okay, so I will have to bring a little context to this. The press conference that was done the other day was one that came exactly one day after the President of the United States released a federal program for what the Fed was going to try to do about guns. And when they held the press conference, there was no state court prosecutor invited. You did not have the Attorney General. You did not have any of the many prosecutors who are state court prosecutors within the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. The Eastern District of Pennsylvania is the federal jurisdiction. It covers several counties. So there was no effort there to slight anyone. There was no effort to say that any particular prosecutor was not a partner. I consider the U.S. Attorney's Office under new leadership, and I consider the people who work there, and I also consider the police commissioner to be our partners. That's point one. Point two, this is not a new partnership. There has always been a relationship in which the U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutes certain kinds of gun cases. There should be. I practiced in that system for 27 years. There should be. There's nothing strange about that. There's nothing strange about their prosecuting high-end drug cases. They have always done that too. So I don't want people to misinterpret, because I think they're not seeing what we're all talking about, which is that my office has always cooperated with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've always cooperated with the police department. But there are some cases that are worthy of heavier consequences that should be down there. What you may not know is I sent 35 cases down there to Bill McSwain's U.S. Attorney's Office, where I thought federal treatment was appropriate, and he sent back 30 of them. He only kept 5, okay? So there's nothing strange about our looking at these cases together and figuring out which jurisdiction makes more sense.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes.
I mean, to be fair, your relationship with the previous U.S. attorney could be described as tense. Are you saying under his new leadership with this acting U.S. attorney that you have more collaboration, better communication?
I'm saying this. Mr. McSwain was entirely political, okay? That was the impediment we had. He was basically a megaphone for Donald Trump through his entire administration. He politicized the office in a way that made it very hard to work with him. It was never hard to work with the professionals who have been in that system for a very long time. I'm not kidding when I say I've known many of them personally for 25 years of my career. I have them in my cell phone. I could pick up the phone and talk to them directly, including people who do gun violence. We do not yet have the Biden-appointed leader of that office. I'm truly looking forward to that. But we have always had a level of professional cooperation that had nothing to do with the politics that Bill McSwain was spinning for what we all know he's going to do next, which is we all know he's going to run for some political office, having tried to use that one to elevate his profile.
The criticism, it seems, from police is that the commissioner is saying she's been asking for more serious consequences. So the criticism seems to be that your office might not be prosecuting with harsh enough consequences, and that she had to make this unique partnership. What's your response to that?
I don't hear that criticism from the commissioner, and I speak to her very regularly. We, once again, let's go to the basics. We have a nearly 85% conviction rate for shootings and homicides, while the police department is doing its best with our assistance during a pandemic to solve more than 1 out of 10, okay? I mean, let's get real. 10% is not 85%. We're doing a very, very good job with the cases that get to us, and we want to help them any way we can to get back to a better level of solving cases. Before the pandemic, the rate of solving shootings was 2 out of 10. Still not perfect, but it's the kind of thing that we can work on together if, for example, we can get better forensics in this city. I think a lot of what I laid out here about all these collaborative efforts with the PPD have already helped. I think they will continue to help. We've been invited to assist with their investigations of shootings, and we've accepted that invitation, even though, you know, our resources are different. 6,500 cops is different than having, 30 DA's detectives, but we have accepted that. So, I mean, I understand that sometimes the press likes conflict, but that's not what I see. What I see is a very collaborative, cooperative relationship with the commissioner of the police department at a political moment when I'm sure the leadership of the FOP and their Proud Boy friends would like to talk about something else.
You started off this conference by saying you want to send a message to gun criminals that they will be prosecuted. Do you think that that message is necessary because there may be a perception that the DA's office is not tough on crime?
I think that people who shoot people are not too bright, and sometimes you got to tell them something 3-4 times before they hear it. So I'm going to keep saying it until they hear it, until they realize what the consequences are. It is always difficult to talk about consequences when you're dealing with over a year of the courts effectively being closed down, over a year of probation and parole effectively being closed down, and policing being impossible to do in ways that it was before the pandemic. So I'm sure that there are some people in the community who feel emboldened by those circumstances. If I have to say it 5 times or 10 times or 500 times, I'm going to keep making the point that, there is a line. You go over the line, and you will have the consequences that you deserve.
Let me ask AJ and Kayla, if you could, the teacher said you lost 5 fellow students in the past year. Is that why you guys got involved in the committee? Could you talk to us for a second about the personal impact that it's had on the 2 of you?
You come to the podium.
You're not in the hot seat.
It's okay.
Not going to get ready for this.
Well, I guess I'll start. Most recently, I lost a classmate that I have been with since 1st grade. His name was Makai Partlow. He died a few months ago, I believe, and that really impacted me because, he was a cool kid. He had a bright future ahead of him. He was just wrong place, wrong time. So, yes, I would say that that's the reason why I would say engage in the program, because it's just unfair that this stuff happens to people that have nothing to do with it. You want to say something, Kayla? Oh, go ahead.
So while you're still there, you talked about, you seem to talk about this crisis from the idea that, and we've heard it from community leaders, and you're an 11th grader, and we hear about it as it being a public health crisis.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about the symptoms, you talked about therapy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, what you mean by it?
Well, I would say that therapy would help because oftentimes when people engage in gun violence, there's something going on within themselves. They're angry, they have resentment, and they result to violence in order to cure those emotions. If they have an outlet to talk about those emotions and cure those traumas that they have, I feel like gun violence would greatly be reduced.
Would you mind telling us your name again and spelling it for us?
My name is Aja Moore, Ajamoore.
And you said 11th grade, right?
Yep. You're welcome. You want to say something, Kayla?
I personally didn't know any of the students who passed due to gun violence, but when I was asked to partake in the conversation, I was excited because I live like 5 minutes away from here. And how all the council members said, at this point, I'm just used to hearing the pops at nighttime. So I was excited to be able to think of some solutions to help that stop.
What is, when you hear the pops at nighttime, what goes through your mind? What do you do?
Well, when I was little, I used to just think they were firecrackers. But now I just I go and sit with my mom or something like that.
I'm sorry, so would you mind saying and spelling your first and last name first?
Yes, my name is Kayla Waddington, CaylaWaddD, like David, INGTON.
9th grader, correct?
Yes, 9th grade.
All right, is-
Mr. Attorney Krasner, I have one question. It's unrelated to this, but it's about the woman who was charged yesterday in the case of the missing Franklin permit. Now, can you give us any more detail on the charges and the woman who was under arrest?
the sound of approaching footsteps would indicate to you we anticipated this question. And so ADA Chesley Lightsey, who is the chief of our homicide non-fatal shooting unit, is ready to address that. Thank you.
And AJ, if you wouldn't mind saying phone your first
Sure.
name, that'd be great.
Chesley Lightsey, C-H-E-S as in Sam, L-E-Y, last name L-I-G-H-T, S as in Sam, E-Y, the chief of the Homicide and Non-Fatal Shooting Unit. What I can tell you about that is that on March 30th, Deanna Bryce was reported missing by her family. Our office has worked very closely with Detective Ed Tolliver of the Homicide Unit, who has worked tirelessly on this case since first learning of it. He has been working himself with federal law enforcement agencies, and through that cooperation and working together, we have issued arrest warrants for 2 people. The actual shooter in this case is the boyfriend of Deanna Bryce, and his name is Justin Smith, and there's a warrant out for his arrest. He is currently a fugitive from justice. The second arrest warrant was for Tylydia Garnett. That is spelled T-Y-L-Y-D-I-A. Last name G-A-R-N as in Nancy, E-T-T. Miss Garnett was not charged with the murder of Miss Bryce. However, she was charged with arson, conspiracy, abuse of corpse ×2 because Miss Bryce was pregnant at the time of her murder. She, when we present our evidence of it, when we get to a preliminary hearing, which we look forward to, we will present evidence that Miss Garnett came very shortly after the murder of Miss Bryce to the aid of her friend Justin Smith. She purchased gasoline. We have her on video doing that, buying the can and the gasoline. She took it to a garage, which is owned or rented by Mr. Smith. She met him there, loaded a heavy object, you see it on video, into the trunk of her car. That object, we believe we will show at the preliminary hearing, was the body of Deanna Bryce with her dead child. She then followed Justin Smith to the area where he dumped Miss Bryce's body like it was trash, and then further followed him while he set his own car on fire. We believe that is where he murdered Miss Bryce, in that vehicle. And then Miss Garnett fled to Miami, Florida. She is back in town. She has been arrested. We asked that even though we did not arrest her for murder because we do not believe at this time we could prove that she was a participant in the murder. We asked that she be held without bail because she went above and beyond in her efforts to help this fugitive both cover up his crime and flee from justice. We were given $75,000 of bail. 10% of that is $7,500. We appealed that. That is still the number we have. So it is my understanding that this defendant, I believe, made that bail and is currently out, but that was not our hope. We believe that she should be in jail waiting for her preliminary hearing, but that is the update as I have now. I have no information about where Mr. Smith's current whereabouts. Certainly, all efforts are being made to find him.
You described them as friends. Is there anything else?
That is the only information that I have. Friends. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you more. I can't give you how long they've been good friends, but I know that they have been friends for a while.
What was going through your head when you heard that bail amount?
Apoplectic would be my feeling. It's unacceptable. This isn't, we have cases where somebody might be called to drive someone away from a scene. That can happen, and that's bad enough. But this is someone who literally, I don't know if anybody else has this joke. I have jokes sometimes of friends that if I ever needed to hide a body, who I'd call. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard that phrase. It sounds terrible, but this is that person. She literally has a dead woman who was pregnant, and she's loading that body into her car, purchasing the gasoline, and then fleeing to Florida afterwards. I mean, it's a disgrace. That number is way too low. Everybody deserves their day in court, and we look forward to ours against Ms. Garnett.
Did she admit to anything?
I don't want to get into her statement, so I apologize. I will not talk about that at this time.
Could you repeat that bail amount again?
$75,000. We asked for held without bail.
Actually, real quickly, do you have concerns that she
We believe she's a flight risk, certainly.
Was there any justification for that from the judge or she had?
None that I'm aware of.
All right, I just have a final comment, and then we will conclude. So that we're all clear, when someone is given a bail of $75,000, you do not have to pay $75,000 to get out. Based upon a rule passed in 2019, God knows why, every single case is subject to 10% bail. It used to be that most of the cases were subject to 10% bail, but now the judges do not even have the option to say you have to pay the full amount. So now we're down to $7,500 gets you out, and if you go to a bail bondsman, most of them will take 1/3 of that. The difference being they'll keep your money in the end, and if you pay the 10%, you'll get your money back if you've gone to court at the end of the case. So what happened here is someone who bought a can of gas, bought the gas, assisted in the process we've heard, was able to get out for either $7,500 if she had the money, or simply $2,500 was sufficient to get out. And when this office sought to have her held so that there was no amount of bail that would get her out, period. This is one more example of a terrible failure of the cash bail system. There are people who should get out paying no money, and there are people who should be held no matter how much money they have. It has worked for 30 years in Washington, D.C., and it would work here. We need to end cash bail. Thank you very much.